the primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful.
AI is a golden opportunity.
How do we ensure that this technology is regulated?
The long arc of technological history is now in an extraordinary new phase.
The AI6 podcast with Joanne Sweeney.
Well, Nicholas Bruneau, thank you so much for joining me on AI6. And this is not our first podcast conversation. I spoke to you a number of years ago. Remind me how many when you launched your book?
2 years ago, actually. Time flies.
So listen, reintroduce yourself to our viewers and listeners and in the context of artificial intelligence, which is the topic for today's conversation.
Nicholas Bruneau. So I'm a strategic communications consultant. I help multilateral organizations to really, transform their messages and really engage for impact. And so that was the title of my book, to try to help them to really find ways in which they can better communicate. And part of that is using AI then as a tool, but without forgetting, the fact that, and we're going to talk about that today, the fact that AI is only a tool and shouldn't replace the strategic viewpoint of our communications.
And when you launched that book, right, it was timely because we were, in a post-COVID era. The internet is so noisy. How do you communicate with impact, and how can you get people to stop the scroll? It almost feels like you need another iteration of that book, because now we have what they call AI slop, and copy is ubiquitous, and it's not just in the hands or minds of us as communicators. So I'm sure that your stakeholders and customers and clients are very welcome that you also are talking about AI and bringing that to them.
Absolutely. I used a little bit of AI in the book, showing how AI can be used for campaigns, and how, for example, there was a campaign that used AI to try to simulate the future and how people would have to deal with climate change in the future. So there are a lot of creative ways in which we can use AI. But I do agree that in 2 years, things have changed drastically. And so it's definitely going to be an interesting idea to sort of redo that, or maybe redo part of it.
Yeah, and we see our governments across the world, and Europe in particular, kind of betting into AI and saying it's the future for our economies, and there's free literacy programs being rolled out by our governments. But do you think that people are ready to go fully in, since, ChatGPT came to the market in 2022? Do you think that, governmental NGO organizations are ready to fully commit?
They're ready to fully commit, but I think it's a question of also time and resources. So as far as communications is concerned, as you know, communications team are overwhelmed and they're understaffed. We're in constant pressure. So learning a new tool, learning a new way of working is something that is a challenge. So I think eventually, people will see that there are a lot of gains to be had with AI, so that the time that you need to upskill is perhaps worth it, because you will have higher outputs and higher gains in the long term.
Now we're going to talk about, AI and event communications and how it can really give you leverage in terms of productivity, also efficiency and streamlining really complicated workflow. So you've got a lot of experience in this arena. How would you describe that leverage of AI in event comms?
I think that it's trying to AI can really help us to improve the way that we deliver events, improve the experience, and also improve the content creation from those events. There's so much that comes out of an event, and we are only touching usually the surface as far as what we can use that event content for. So whether it's repurposing, whether it's creating new content before the event, during, and after, there's a lot of different ways in which AI can really help to amplify and strengthen the communications of our events.
And your point is well made about the overworked, under-resourced position of communications teams. I see it all the time, and the expectation that's on their shoulders is just deliver, just deliver. Uh, let's talk about social media and, that digital communications element. Can we still get our message heard on social when now we have like ChatGPT Images 2.0, which is pretty phenomenal, I will say, in the latest release, and producing a level of content on the feed that, is really even more competition for us?
Hmm. As far as what gets people to stop the scroll, I did a survey or at least a study a while back with one of my clients, and we noticed that what was really getting people's attention was when someone was speaking and when it was a real person, of course. So having that and bringing that into your event communications, I think is going to be a benefit because that is what stops people from scrolling is seeing a real person saying something and then really having clear message. So I do believe that you have to work on it and you have to find ways in which you can present that in a way that's engaging. But I do believe that AI, AI generated images or video is not going to replace that interest in, real people talking about new things and new issues. And that's what an event is, it's really trying to sort of harness those ideas from the speakers, from the participants, and really getting something that is going to then, raise up the issues that were discussed at that event. So using AI, I think, is a way to do that, whether it's in the preparation of the event or at the actual, event content creation afterwards.
And you know what? I think AI for comms professionals, we do what we have to do to deliver. And then there are other things which would be nice to do that you just don't get to. But I think this is where the AI lever comes in. And you've got a really nice event case study as well that you might share.
Yeah, I was working with one multilateral organization, and we wanted to do, before the event, we wanted to do a pre-event survey to try to suss out really what were the priorities of our participants so that we could really, really address their pain points and their challenges. So the survey was really quite open and we had a lot of input, and then trying to quantify that and trying to do, just a basic word cloud just didn't cut it. So I used AI to then analyze the survey results. And then using that, we were able to find some commonalities, some big picture issues. And then afterwards, using Notebook LM, we did a summary video. So the summary video was a great way to really bring together like the big picture issues. And it was so good actually that we showed it on the first day of the conference. And we said, of course, this is clearly AI generated. We didn't shy away from the fact that, this was something that wasn't coming directly from us, but we wanted to spark discussions. We wanted to open it up. And even though I think when I talked about it with the client afterwards, they said, yeah, the LLM simplified a little bit the issues and, tried to fit everything into a clean narrative, which wasn't the case. But it really, really helped to kickstart discussions and really, really, showcase or really all that information in an innovative way. So to try to really bring it all together.
Yeah, and another area that is absolutely vital, especially for government and public sector agencies, is their responsibility around accessibility. How are you leveraging AI for that?
I think AI for accessibility is really important, and this is. I know that, for example, Zoom and other webinar softwares, they already include, the possibility for live captions. And also using, for example, something like 11 Labs, you're able to do a multilingual summary. So to showcase something in various different languages. I actually was speaking with an EU official and they talked about using 11 Labs for having a multilingual podcast. So the same podcast in various different languages. So I think there's plenty of different uses, whether it's, linguistic or or people that have challenges. So that's helpful, and also making sure, of course, a website is correctly referenced. I think is an easy way, an easy win by using all that alt text and different things like that.
Yeah, and you also, have worked or looking at like chatbots, and I've installed a chatbot on my website in the last month or two, because we have all this anonymized data and anonymized people coming to our websites, and if they don't convert or fill out a form and they exit, what are we left with? But conference chatbots are interesting. What are you seeing in that field?
What I haven't used it myself for a conference, and I'd be interested in hearing, how it's going on your website. But I have seen a case study, for example, the Women in Aviation conference. They use a chatbot for logistical support, and I think that as long as people know that it is AI, that they're speaking to a chatbot, then they're more open to asking questions. They're more open to perhaps, asking for different things and using either SMS or WhatsApp to answer those questions. And what it did is it really reduced a lot of the time needed for staff to respond to questions, because these were logistical issues like what's the Wi-Fi code, what is, where's the venue, and what time is that person speaking. I think it can really, really help to really smoothen things and take away all that staff time. So it can be helpful, but I'd be interested in hearing from you. How's it going with your chatbot, and how did you develop it?
Yeah, well, I mean, it's the chatbot's called AIJ, and explicitly when you come onto my website, you're greeted by her, and she says, "Hey, I'm AIJ, Joanne's virtual assistant. How can I help you?" So I call her she. She's trained on the hundreds of pages on the website, and really the objective is to allow people to self-serve, or whether it's free knowledge from all the blogs, the podcasts, the articles, or whether they're making a purchasing decision, looking at pricing or if I'm the right fit. And so the goal is for me to then look at what questions they're asking, and then to cross-reference, well, do I have the right content on my website? So it's both conversion, saving time, but also, I think, good market research. So I need more data to come back, but no doubt I'll turn that into a podcast episode when I've got enough information. But from comms professionals and like post conference reports, it's not about a lack of content. We suffer from too much content and too much information. So how can AI help when you're at the end of the event, all that hard work has paid off, but you're maybe left with only the photos and the videos and a feel good factor? How can it be used then in terms of, summing up the wins?
Mm-hmm. And I mentioned this in the book that I wrote, which was once, and actually in Dublin, we finished a conference, and it was, months and months of work. And then finally at the end of the last day, I was really, relieved that it was finally over and I could start, my work as normal. But I do believe that particularly now with all the AI content that we can generate from a conference, that it's only the beginning. That a conference, the end of a conference, should be the beginning of a whole process where you're really channeling your content to reach a goal. So first of all, I think that you want a conference that is going to have an output, but also that is going to help you and your audience get more engaged on the issues that matter. So perhaps having an objective or a different, essentially a way in which you're going to be able to make more of an impact after the event. So if you're able to then use your content to create, first of all, a post-event conference report, but also, all these different things like a blog post, different interview formats, different reports that are focused on perhaps industry or different geographies, different ways in which you're going to use that content. And then I think that it's really an opportunity to broaden the impact of an event and increase the ROI, because what you're doing is you're not only doing it for the people in the room, but then afterwards, for a lot of the other people that either follow you or are interested in that issue. So it's really a way to broaden the impact of an event.
And what about like Gen AI, apart from text, right? We've got Gen AI for, visual creation, video editing. What are some of your favorite tools that you use?
For I I think that, one of the things with an event is that you have all this video content, and who's going to sit through hours and hours of presentations, speeches. And I don't know if you've used Opus Clip. I think it's very useful to really take a 1 hour presentation and to really find the snippets into it. It is still a little bit of work. You need to sort of, Opus Clip gives you like maybe tons of different little clips, and then you need to find the right ones. But it is a helpful way, particularly when you're not a video editor, to do something that is going to be easily showing basically what was discussed, what are the key issues, and what are the key moments of that. And so I think that has been really helpful. What I've been using also, I've been organizing a lot of meetups here, and I've been using the transcription tool Firefly, which is similar to Otter, which other people might know. And so whenever we have a meetup, even if it's in a loud cafe, it'll do a transcription, it'll do the summary, and then I'll use that for a blog post. I'll use that to do a video. I'll use that afterwards for social media. So there's plenty of ways in which you can then, use all that content afterwards if you're prepared beforehand.
Yeah, yeah. And you asked me before we started recording, were you actually talking to the real Joanne, or was it the AI generated version of me? And we had a giggle, but honestly, agentic AI is becoming quite mainstream. Are we moving towards AI agents for events? Will we be creating like AI event assistants anytime soon?
I think that's a good question. And, things are moving so quickly that, we really need to always experiment. We need to try new things. And this is, where communications can really, really have an impact, have a greater impact. So, for me, I think that, and just like yourself, we need to always be trying to innovate and always keep our ear on the ground. And that's why, like, for me, I'm always, every day I'll listen to the AI 6 podcast. I think it's a great way of keeping in touch with what's going on, and to always then after that trying to experiment and play around as well and take the time to do that.
Yeah, well, do you know what? AI 6 was probably the greatest gift that I gave to myself to help me build the knowledge and keep the knowledge. I committed to delivering it, but actually it's been so good to, help me stay informed around what's happening, because it is so overwhelming. As you said, who is the expert really? Because we're all just experimenting in this new age. So final point, what would you say, Nicholas, to people who are watching or listening to this and, they're in comms and they're just afraid of getting it wrong and they're feeling overwhelmed? What should they do?
Essentially, what I would try to do is have an experimental viewpoint where it's a controlled experiment, where you're able to look at something that is going to be very targeted, very focused, but very objective based. So something that is going to help you really, really reach an objective in a very structured way. And, you've talked about it before. AI has so many different facets. We should be first focusing on where we're spending the most time that then AI can help us to save. And so it's trying to find first that area that, for example, the repurposing, I think, is a quick win for any organization to try to use AI and to do it in a very structured way so that you're really meeting your objectives and keeping an eye on the strategy. And then, as you know, keeping the human in the loop, making sure that we're there and we're reviewing and keeping as authentic as possible. Because at the end of the day, a conference is all about people, and we need to sort of keep that element in everything that we do.
Yeah, we are still relevant. We are still needed. We're not taking the army of bots in just yet to replace us, but I think it's just another evolution from when we used to cut tape and radio and I learned shorthand at university to now we have these AI skills. So I think we're, as you rightly say, we're well placed to do it, but we must experiment. Where can people go and connect with you, Nicholas, or find out more about your work?
If anyone would like to connect with me on LinkedIn, I'm happy to do so. It's Nicholas Bruneau, which is Bruneau at the end, and also nicholasbruneau.com.
Excellent. And we will link that in the show notes. Great to catch up with you. And we will use AI to clip this video for shorts. Thank you.
Thank you, John.